حلقة النقاش الثانية لهذا اليوم ستلقي الضوء على الوصول إلى أفضل الفرص الاستثمارية، ويدير دفة الحوار والنقاش في هذه الحلقة الدكتور سليتر تشارلز ماكلين، مدير الشركات الناشئة GSV لابس، وبمشاركة عدة متحدثين منهم الأستاذ نواف الصحاف الرئيس التنفيذي لبرنامج بادر لحاضنات ومسرعات التقنية، والأستاذ خليل الشافعي المدير التنفيذي لبرنامج واعد بشركة أرامكو السعودية، والأستاذ مارون إيفانز الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة نكس كيوبد، والأستاذ إيفون أونوسيك رئيس شركة غوثام ألفا. فليتفضلوا مشكورين ورحبوا معي بالمتحدثين ورئيس الجلسة.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to start by quickly introducing myself. My name is Slater McLean. I'm the Startup Director at GSV Labs. We're a global innovation ecosystem based in Silicon Valley in Boston, and I've spent the last 3 or so years there working with the startups in our community and helping identify new startups to bring into our programs. We have a really, really exciting panel for you today, kind of talking about accessing kind of the best deal flow and ways, strategies, and trends around kind of increasing that deal flow and access to early stage investment opportunities. But before we get started, I just want to give everyone a quick 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive in. So why don't we start with Nawaf? Why don't you give a quick background on yourself?
My name is Nawaf Sahaf. I started my career from KFUPM. I graduated from KFUPM. Then I joined SIDF, which is Saudi Industrial Development Fund, and where I continue my studies in Strathclyde University in Scotland, where I get another degree in international marketing. Then I joined in 2010 Badr program. In 2013, I've been appointed as the CEO of Badr program. In 2016, I've been appointed as CEO of a company called BAC, which is Business Incubator Accelerator Company, which is owned by PIF. And we are operating several programs in the government initiative of Transformation Program 2020. And we are now operating many programs and offering an investment services to the industry. And we are now working closely with Munshaat and other VC actually in the region.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And Khalil, why don't you give yourself a quick intro?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Khalil Al-Shafi. I'm the CEO and the Managing Director of WAID. WAID is the Saudi Aramco, basically venture capital company. We invest in startup companies. Our fund is $300 million. We invest from a seed fund, which is about $25,000, up to $5 million. And we invest in everything except, and we don't do restaurants, we don't do construction contractors, and we don't invest in military ammunition. But otherwise, we invest in agri-tech, sports, entertainment, health, energy, Internet of Things, robotics, artificial intelligence. All these things are open for investment. And we do training as well. We also have accelerators and incubators, and we also provide shared services for our startup companies.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Marlon, how about a quick background on yourself?
Great. Thank you. My name is Marlon Evans. I'm the CEO of Next Cubed, which is based out of Silicon Valley, also with offices in San Diego and Washington, D.C. We're an investor that creates and accelerates primarily frontier tech companies. So these are companies that are leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, AR, VR, robotics. We have kind of 3 key platforms. One is our incubation platform, where we invest in those early stage companies. We have about 40 companies that are in our portfolio, and we'll add another 40 this year. We accelerate later stage companies. So these are Series A and beyond companies that are have capital to bear but aren't quite ready to launch specific departments within their company. So they'll outsource whether it be a CFO function, a Chief Revenue Officer function, Chief Marketing Officer function to NextCubed. And we also work with Fortune 1000 companies as well as experienced entrepreneurs and help them start companies from scratch. So we go from the idea stage all the way through to help companies to a liquidity event.
Fantastic. Evan, why don't you give a quick background?
Hi, I'm Evan Onusik. I'm an entrepreneur out of Silicon Valley. I started a company about 3 years ago called Algo, which was teaching computers how to read the news. It was acquired about 2 years ago. And during my daytime, I'm actually a product manager for the acquiring company called Meltwater. But in my spare time, I am a venture partner at Hoff Capital and work with other different family offices and different venture institutions in Silicon Valley to help them deploy their capital and find great opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you to all of you. I want to get started. A kind of theme I think we've seen over the last day and a half or so is kind of around accelerators and incubators and the role they've played in kind of the broader ecosystem here and around the world. So as we're thinking about accessing and finding new deal flow, I kind of want to touch on how accelerators and incubators kind of lift startups up to be kind of prepare them to be ready to accept investment and get them to that level. So Marlon, since you have a lot of background with accelerators, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just at a key period for startups, that first kind of 6 to 12 months of the company's existence is often the hardest. And as capital is remaining, getting less risky and wanting to wait until companies have more and more traction, you really need accelerators and incubators to help bridge that gap from when the companies first start to when they're ready to go out and raise some institutional capital. So whether it's accelerators or incubators, angel investors, friends and family, that capital at that initial period is extremely important. And in addition to the capital, it's really the advice and the counsel that these programs can provide to help the companies navigate that first challenges that they're inevitably going to face. How do you scale from 2 founders to 5 to 6 to 8 people? That's really where the accelerators and incubators can play a significant role. And my experience is that it's not just the program and setting it up and saying, here's the curriculum. You really need to have individuals, program directors, entrepreneurs and residents, folks who have been there, done that, and can really provide you with the counsel that you need to make sure you're not falling into those same pitfalls that, hit most startups.
Evan, did you have something to add?
I'd love to also jump on top of that. So another thing too, as far as as the industry is concerned, and these things have been continuously growing, and the more these accelerators and incubators come online, it's really important as far as which one you go after, which one you join, and which one you connect with. So for example, NextCube, GSV Labs, and the rest, the Y Combinators and 500 are incredible programs. And it's easy to get caught up in a situation where just because they have the name of accelerator or incubator, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the absolute great partner for you. So getting really good programmatic approach to this situation to help the companies grow is very important.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, and Nawaf, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on how programs like Batter have kind of attributed to helping educate startups and kind of bring them to the next level in Saudi Arabia itself.
Of course, regarding the incubator accelerator and Badr program and what we added value to startups. For Badr program, we are the biggest network of incubator in the Middle East, I think. And we are leading the incubator in ArcticNet for 22 countries, starting from 2019 until 2021. So it's 3 years. So what we offer actually is access to community. Under our program, we have existing of 350 startups. We have 20% of our startups, they are international companies, international startups. So we offer access to community, access to knowledge, access to advice, like what my colleagues in the panel said. So I think the access to community and access to this kind of services, which is contain a lot of services of business development, knowledge, access to through Badr program, you can get access to CACs, which is actually a research center, labs. You can get access to a vertical of services and health and biotechnology. Now we are going to manufacturing, I4, and all of this. So my answer is the acceptance to a network of incubators is offer you a credibility as well to startups when it came to having deals, especially in Saudi Arabia, when getting deals from government, which is considered a major source of contracts and deals for the startups. So it's combination of credibility, combination of getting access to market, credibility, actually it is community. So this is how Badr program is important for startups.
No, thank you very much. And Khalil, I'd love to get your perspective as someone who's actively investing in startups in Saudi Arabia, and what kind of these accelerators mean to you as a source of deal flow, and how they kind of help you find the best companies.
Yeah, sure. WIDE started in 2010, and there was perception like there are so many startup companies and entrepreneurs, they just don't have fund. So when WIDE started, our focus was mainly on the fund. And then we find out we have the money, but we don't have companies to invest in, quality companies. There is a lot of flow of deals, but they're really not good quality. So we decided, okay, we need to collaborate with the incubators in the kingdom, like Badr, Wadi Mecca, Wadi Riyadh, Wadi Jeddah, and 9/10, and so on. In addition, we build our own accelerators and incubators. And then we find out, okay, you have all these physical location, but you lack the meat of that, which is who's going to mentor those startup companies. Mm-hmm. So we form our own innovation ecosystem forum, and we started in 2016. We were 10, and now we are 340. Consists of members from all aspects of the community, academic, government people, lawyers, investors, founders of companies, young people, just whoever want to learn something about entrepreneurs or start up a company, they are welcome to join. And that's kind of what we were doing. So recently, in last year, we hosted our first hackathon to really bring the whole idea as well. We have 2,000 applicants. We accepted 150, and 70% of them were ladies, actually. And they were actually, most of the ladies were the hackers. And not the opposite. I mean, always people think like the men are the hackers and the ladies are providing the administrative support. Actually, it was the opposite. And actually, many of the winners, they were all lady team. Mm-hmm. So we can see the female. I think the female are better entrepreneurs than the male, because they're more focused on the subject. Males, they always try to do too many things because they're distracted by their friends in the market. So they start something, doesn't work, his friend tells him, why are you doing this? Come work with me on this. And then they leave this, work on that, and so on. So sometimes not having that access actually help to focus on subject and keep going at it. We don't stop there. The winners got 150,000 riyals. We have 9 winners, 9 teams. That means in each team there were about 5 people. There were 45 winners, and each team got 150. Now we're establishing a 12-week program to incubate all these teams. So we have now almost 50 teams coming on board. Mm-hmm. And so when we see a problem, the last thing I want to do is say the government need to do something. I'm really totally opposed to always expecting the government to do something. I'm more excuse me, I'm more with JFK. What you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. Yeah. And that's how we approach all our problems.
No, I think that's really, really interesting. And you know, I'm curious, I kind of want to dive into a little bit on how kind of universities play in this, but before I get into that, you know, I'm curious as to where you're finding the folks that are participating in these hackathons and kind of joining these accelerators. Are they coming out of universities, or are they coming out of, you know, where are they coming from predominantly?
The majority, I mean, when we have our hackathon, the average age was between 16 and 27.
Gotcha.
So we have people from high school, universities, and people who just graduated from universities. Most of our startup companies, the average age is about 27 as well. So they're all the young generation. They are the one who pursuing it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And are you seeing that universities are kind of, you know, helping the younger generation kind of get the education they need and kind of the entrepreneurial bug when they're kind of going through them and coming out of them?
What we see universities trying, but universities are more academic. So it's like they say, if you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you are a university professor, you think you can fix all the problems by giving courses and seminars and more courses and seminars. Well, actually, it's not. The entrepreneur is more of hands-on. Like you know, you need instructors or professors or teachers who actually invested money, their own money, so they know the pain, and they are our founded companies, so they know the psychology of starting a company is not a hobby.
Yeah.
And the problem is the university teaches like a hobby. Like if you take a course, you can run out and start up a company. It's wrong. As a matter of fact, our entrepreneurs, we tell them it is hard work. It is a long marriage. If you don't like her, don't marry her from the beginning. So you need to love the company. You need to love what you're doing because you're going to live with her for 10 years.
Yeah. So
you better know that this is what you want to do and you can do it.
Yeah, yeah. No, Evan, I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts on kind of that similar aspect of entrepreneurship and universities.
Yeah, I mean, so you've known me now for a while, and it's no secret that GSV Labs is producing an actual accelerator in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And a lot of people wonder, why Pittsburgh? It's middle of nowhere as far as the United States is concerned. Nobody's ever heard of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as far as outside the United States. And it gets a bad rap for being an old steel mill town. Now, the biggest reason is because, ironically, and I don't know how this exactly happened, but it has the #1 program in artificial intelligence and robotics in its backyard. So, University of Carnegie Mellon, although it's considered the flyover university, and nobody ever mentions it in the same breath as Stanford or Berkeley or Harvard and the rest, is actually the inventor of autonomous cars, one of the very first program initiatives of ARPANET, which became the internet. The inventor of the emoticons, the little emoji you get on your phone, right? It's little things like that CMU has produced that have gone missed, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity to actually take those university systems and help to encourage them with a lot of incentives from, outside investment or co-investments with government relationships, and then bring in young students who are looking for maybe shorter programs or, hands-on experience that are 6 months long, 3 months long that are operated by small branches like GSV Labs. It's actually fascinating, right? So we all have this thing in our pockets, right? Cell phone, the touch screen, the microprocessor, GPS, the internet you connect to, and even parts of the camera were all research projects out of universities. And so it's a very important point to not only help invest in these communities and alongside these universities and encourage them to pass it on to the young students, but also then retaining that talent and creating this sense of entrepreneurship is something I couldn't see more of in the United States and the rest of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think to the point of creating a sense of entrepreneurship, and to Khalil's point, it's different than the typical academic kind of process that you go through, and so there's programs like NextCubed and Batter that kind of help engage individuals in that process. So, Marlon, I'd love to learn a little bit from you about how you kind of help engage folks that are generally very kind of, maybe academic, very kind of research-focused individuals, and kind of help them get that entrepreneurial spirit when they're starting some of these like more difficult tech-based companies. Marlon?
Oh, for me? Oh. Yeah, so we run what we call a summer founders program where, students who are out for the summer really want to have an immersive experience of what it would be like to be an entrepreneur and kind of give it a go for a 3-month period of time, write business plans, understand how they're going to think about their go-to-market strategy, start thinking about their product, have them meet with investors, have them meet with corporates, really go through that whole process and gain an understanding to the point made earlier. Are they truly passionate about what they're working on? Is this something that they think about every day, 24/7, every night before they go to bed? Are they thinking about how to solve the problem that their company was designed to create? And sometimes you don't get that understanding unless you've actually experienced it for a time in an environment where there's not a whole lot of risk. You're able to kind of take chances and know that, it's only a summer project at this point. But once you get really serious, once you say, this is something that I want to spend more time on, you go out and you start raising outside capital. At least you know at that point that you're committed, and this isn't something that you're just going to give up on at the first time there's a little bit of a challenge. So I always encourage people to have that experience, whether it's through a university, whether it's through an accelerator incubator program, or whether it's through going and working at an early stage startup to get an understanding of what it's like to be in that environment. Make sure you expose yourself to it at some point, because entrepreneurship, I am convinced, is the hardest career path you can go down, and you want to make sure that before you take those steps that you're prepared and ready.
No, thank you. And Naf, I kind of want to end this topic with you and learn a little bit more about how kind of Batter works with university programs, and how kind of you have your own education and curriculum around kind of taking entrepreneurs, leveling them up and things like that, and sourcing from universities.
Yes. So we have two ways of with Batter universities. We have the student working with the startups as a trainee. Mm-hmm. So we bring the trainee in specific subject working for our startups around the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And that is good for the trainee or for the student, so he will learn the direction of the startup. He start to learn everything, because startups, he will work on HR, he work as a finance, he work on operating, so he work everything. So he can learn a lot in this 7 months or 3 months, because different between university to university. The another way of collaboration between us and university is through the project. They have graduation project, and we deal with the university as this project. It will be end as a startups at the end. So they will do the project for this 7 months. Then we will take care of formulating the relationship between the student and do the legal entity and securing the fund and do the competition so we take care of all this aspect of the graduation project. So this is the two ways we are in Batter program dealing and our interaction with the universities.
No, I think that's interesting. I think the question at the end of all this is, do these universities programs work? Do they produce entrepreneurs that are and founders that are kind of ready for investment at the end of them? And Khalil, do you have a perspective on that?
What do we find out when we work with, I would not say all, some of them, that the entrepreneurs or the startup companies within the universities, it's become like another program or a course. Mm-hmm. So they do it to please their professor. Mm-hmm. As soon as they graduate, they don't see them anymore. It's gone. Huh. So very few of them actually continue with their project. Most of them, they really disappear. You don't see them. And that's kind of a problem. Again, for the same reason as entrepreneurship is hard work. And the smart kids, they want to go and work for Aramco or work for SABIC or work for a secure job. Mm-hmm. So in other universities, the smart kids, they are the top 1 or 2%, they are the one who's starting up the companies. Yeah. But here, actually, you lose them to the market, to working for big companies or for whoever pay them higher salary. They are not into starting up a company, and you don't blame them, because statistically, if you have a job, you do better than starting up a company. The failure with a startup company is much higher than finding a job and starting a family. So you have this dilemma in the market. It's not easy. So it requires a lot of work. So when you see the entrepreneur who work with us, they really sacrifice until they get the product through. And the only reason they continue working on it because we have this notion that if some company has a problem, let's bring entrepreneur to fix it for them. It doesn't work. Zero success factor, because you need to be passionate about that problem to spend your time to work on it. So most of the entrepreneurs work with us, actually they're passionate about their problem. Like we have one guy who was working with us in our incubator. His son has, what they call it, like Down syndrome. And he took his kids to different schools and it's not benefiting. So he basically quit his job and he said, I'm going to do it myself and work with other people. And that's what he has been doing for 2 years, developing games, programs. So the kids not just go to school for 3 hours or 4 hours and come home and do nothing. They see like whatever he does in 3-4 hours, when he come home, he forget everything. So he's working and developing this program because he's passionate. And you see him every day working, coming and working and sacrificing. And that's hard work. And that's what we try to teach our entrepreneurs. If you have to be passionate and you have to have the skill to do it.
Yeah.
Being passionate by itself is not going to make you get you there.
Yeah. No, I think starting a business is one of the hardest things in the world, and without that kind of core passion, it's something that is almost undoable in a lot of ways. So, to kind of dive a little bit deeper on that and things like that, you said the average age of a lot of the founders that you work with is 27, and I think in Silicon Valley we see the average age of a lot of the folks that we work with as kind of on the 30s, late 20s, early 30s. So I'm curious, where are you seeing kind of are these folks going and working for Aramco, working for some of the big companies, and then coming back to entrepreneurship? And how do you use programs and accelerators and incubators to get them to kind of refocus on entrepreneurship after they've gone and they've kind of done the corporate thing and made a little bit of money maybe?
Well, some of them actually, when we work in the corporate, again, the corporates have also their own problems. Like, for example, some of the companies, if the employee, let's say, start up something really new and cool and can start up a company from it, we, even if it's Aramco employee, even though we are a subsidiary of Aramco, we cannot invest in that person unless he quit.
Interesting.
Because of conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And then you say to quit, they don't want to quit. He has a secure job. He knows when is his vacation. He knows he gets his salary on the 29th of every month. So everything is there. So we're trying to come up with the new programs with Aramco. I mean, it's not confirmed yet, but we are proposing to the company that the entrepreneurs will get like 3 years X time, like no pay.
Yeah.
And so he work on his project. If it did work, he doesn't need to go back. If it did not work, he will go back with much smarter and much more capable. He knows the business market now. He knows what it takes. He learned finance. He learned technical. So he actually would be much better employee for the company than if he just continue with the company. So we're trying to address all these issues in this kind of perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really interesting. And, Marlon and Evan, I'd love to kind of get your guys' perspective on that from the Silicon Valley ecosystem and how we see folks go work for, the big tech companies and then kind of switch into entrepreneurship.
I think that, the points that you hit on are actually very much so very important about the notion of, de-risking failure. Especially in developing communities like this, I can only imagine that the risks as far as leaving your job and having the opportunity to then eventually come back to it makes it far easier than leaving your job and never having that door again. I think it's a massive component to things that you're doing in a region. I definitely want to see more of that. That'd be amazing. But as far as Silicon Valley is concerned, I mean, I feel like most entrepreneurs have that wild story of how they show up in Silicon Valley. I started a hacker house when I first moved out there, which was basically a house in downtown Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, 5 bedrooms, crazy rent. And we packed that thing with 17 to 20 kids who were all eager to be entrepreneurs. And it was basically how we paid the rent, because I moved out to the valley with $100 in my pocket. And part of that like scrappiness is kind of what we always kind of instilled, but with the support systems that we have built into the Valley, as far as a really strong community to help each other and grow and learn. And if you do fail, it's not the end of the world. There's ways for you to get employed or ways for you to find new footing. So, harp on the notion of finding another opportunity afterwards. I think it's very important. I also know of plenty of guys. So one of my roommates actually, Eric Simons, he's known as the AOL squatter. And he moved out for an internship with AOL and ended up sleeping on the couch after his internship was over, showering in the gym, eating from the cafeteria because it never took away his pass, and living there far past his internship to build his company until eventually he was kicked out. There's a lot of stories of things like that are very, very common in the Valley. So, as far as the opportunities that these large corporates provide is things like that, attracting smart, eager talent to then set up in an area and then retaining them is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and I would just add, if you think about many of the amazing companies that have been formed out of Silicon Valley, oftentimes these are founded by individuals who came out of, back in the day it was HP and it was, Intel, and now you have more recent companies like, PayPal and, where the founders of those companies, or the senior leadership of those companies are going to found companies like, Tesla and Netflix. And so corporates have a really huge role to play in inspiring that entrepreneurship within their employees, because these are the individuals who are going to go out and then start the next great big company. So as an investor, I'm always looking to see what types of experiences has the individual had, not only from an entrepreneurship perspective, but have they worked at Salesforce, have they worked at Cisco, have they worked at some other companies, to really understand what does that end vision look like? What does it look like when the company is at full scale and growth? Not only can they get a vision of what it's like to start a company, but how do you scale and sustain a company's growth? So I think that experience is invaluable, and to the extent that large corporates can foster that sense of entrepreneurship within their employees, I think you'll start seeing more and more opportunities here in Saudi to have companies spawn off of other companies.
Yeah, no, and to kind of close this point out and off, I'd love to get your perspective on how Batter kind of works with large corporations and things like that to attract these types of entrepreneurs that are kind of coming out of working a corporate job.
Yeah, we have a program called High Impact Entrepreneurs. So we go to a targeted companies, and we have this agreement between Badr program and this company, and we say this is a 6-month program where the company they should not stop their salaries, and we enroll them in this program for 6 months, and at the end of this 6 months we will have this product, and the company they will have equity in these startups. And we are going to fund the prototyping process of this 6 months. This is good for the company because those talented people, the company, they don't want to lose them because usually they are really good. However, and they have hands-on experience and problems, they see it in the production or in the companies. So this is the program we have, and we call it High Impact Entrepreneurs, and it's doing really well.
No, that's really, really cool.
And Slater, before we move on, I would like to add just one last point. We always think of Silicon Valley as this large area with all these incredible companies and it's flourishing. It's very hard to forget that the history of Silicon Valley is it used to be a farm town. 50, 60 years ago, you could throw a rock and you wouldn't be able to find even a road. But now it's built up this large area and huge industrial complex from the notion of literal government investment. If it wasn't for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory or Ames research centers across Silicon Valley in general, we wouldn't have the opportunities we have today because all those things attracted really smart talent that then branched off. And so it actually reminds me very much similarly to the 2030 initiative, where there's this huge movement from government to corporate to try to drive really international communities into the area to help them set up long term.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that added point. I think it's really interesting. You know, we're kind of nearing the end of the panel, but the last kind of piece I'd like to touch on is, you know, we've talked about accelerators, we've talked about incubators and corporates and universities as being kind of really prolific sources of deal flow. But, you know, where are we missing? You know, where is the deal flow going to come from that we're not thinking about? You know, where is it going to start coming from in the future, or is it going to come from anywhere else other than corporates, accelerators, and things like that? Clue, you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
So what we're doing right now, I mean, when we started, we were focusing only in Kingdom, and we found out like the quality of deal flow is not that big. But then if you look at how ecosystems are developed, and everywhere, in Silicon Valley, in Boston, Cambridge area, Austin, Texas, it's not all Americans who lived in Silicon Valley. They are starting companies there. They are all coming from all around the world and starting up there. So what we planning to do, and also working with the Munshaat as well, provide the easy access to come in. So we're working with companies who are willing to set up base in Saudi. So we work with them, get them the certification they required, and we fund them as well to start up their companies or set up a base here, and to train the Saudi professionals who want to work with them. To me, it's like you know, when we have a soccer team, you bring people internationally, so elevate the quality of your players. So we're doing the same thing. We're bringing those high quality startup companies. They bring their own people from Silicon Valley or from Cambridge and position them in Saudi, and take the Saudis to Silicon Valley that they hire, train them there for 3 months with their big team, and then bring them back again to actually become the people who are running the local offices. It's cheaper for them that way, and it's also it will build on what we want to do in the future. So this is something we're working on. We sign up an agreement with Saga that any of these companies, Saga willing to give them their certification within 2 days. And actually, we did bring companies, and they did give them certification in 2 days. And Munshaat also building up like from their co-working space, that from the visa point of view and all this, speeding up the process and allow them to work. That's kind of things we are doing to bring things in.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredible. I think it's a really interesting perspective to take on that. Marlon, you have any kind of thing to add to where we might start seeing an influx of sources of investment opportunities over the next couple of years?
No, I mean, I think right now we've touched on the key areas: the universities, the corporates, through the incubators and the accelerators. And I think just to follow up on that point, getting that kind of cross-border exposure, which I know is integral to GSV Labs and the idea of the global Silicon Valley, but bringing companies from all over the globe to Saudi to get that exposure from those entrepreneurs, those corporates, to give an understanding of how they've built things, and then, you know, vice versa, having students and entrepreneurs come to, you know, not just Silicon Valley or in the U.S., but going to other hotspots around the globe. That kind of cross-pollination is just really important and critical to fostering the sense of a larger community.
Yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. Nawaf, do you have anything to add to that, where you think you might start seeing some of the best deal flow beyond kind of the typical places?
Well, as I said, for us in the incubator, we have communities, and we open up now. Saudi Arabia is open up the startups environment by having entrepreneurial visa from SAGA, and now we are going to see more and more of international startups accessing the region through Saudi Arabia, and we have a long waiting list accessing this program and coming to Saudi Arabia through Badr program platforms, because we have, like now, we have 8 locations around the kingdom, and I think startups is coming from everywhere. We have from Europe, a lot of startups coming from Arab region, of course, we have to manage this because we want to have mixed environment, mixed culture. But I think startups coming from China, it's coming from Middle East, and some of Russia. We have Russian startups in Badr program. Now we have 26 international startups in Badr program. Yeah.
No, I that's all great. I think, really internationally is kind of the theme of everyone's conversation here is really we're going to see a lot more international activity and kind of the global startup ecosystem open up over the next couple of years, which I think is spot on.
One thing,
Yeah, please.
We're not focusing on again the we need to have international people here. Mm-hmm. It's more focused on the product or the company. So we're in Saudi Arabia, we lack the startups in robotics or artificial intelligence or machine learning. Mm-hmm. So these are the companies we are focusing on to bring to Saudi.
Gotcha.
Not the traditional startups, online retail, because mm-hmm. anybody can do that. I don't need to bring people here or any of that. So that's kind of the focus we're trying to do, because we find out a lot of the local universities, they still lack the graduating people or students with the focus on the future. What we see 10 years from now, this is the future, mm-hmm. and that's what we need to focus on right now to be there in 10 years.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Definitely. Well, I think with that we're about out of time, and I'd love to open it up to questions from the audience. So how about right over here in the. I don't know where the microphone is. Might as well just speak up. Right down here, in third row, maybe.
السلام عليكم. المهندس ماجد الغيمش. I'd like to thank the panelists for this distinguished session. The theme of the session is accessing the best investment opportunities. And you are all institutional investors. And I have two questions, please. One is addressing to Mr. Nawaf, and the other for all the panelists. Mr. Nawaf, you mentioned in your network that you have 350 startup companies, and 20 of them is international startup companies. So would you please elaborate more on that? And I will connect this question with the MISC innovation, that they have also a collaboration with the 500 startups. It's an international institution. So do you have any coordination with them? This is the question for Mr. Nawaf. The other question for all the panelists. We understand that the language of investment is mainly one word, it's risk. And the language is finance, is guarantees. And all of you are investors, professional investing institutions. So what is your investment policy, and what is your constraints for risk taking? Taking into consideration the opportunity in Saudi Arabia, it's announced yesterday the biggest program in Saudi Arabia, which is the National Industrial Development and Logistic Program. And His Excellency, the Minister of Energy and Industry and Mining, he mentioned very clearly that the new program mainly will rely on scientific research and innovation. So taking into consideration the fourth industrial revolution and the transformation of digital economy, so where do you see your opportunities? Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with my questions.
Perfect.
Okay, I mentioned 350, this is right, and we have 26 international startups. So the question was, elaborate.
Yeah.
Okay, so the objective of this, we have this startups. So why we are bringing international startups? The question is to improve the community. Our objective is to improve the community of Badr program network. We don't want Saudi to have another Saudi startups, another Saudi startup, another Saudi startups. This is not good for us. We want them to learn and to communicate with international startups in terms to increase the productivity and the thinking circle of the startups. Actually, I'm not sure if we can say the 26 companies are startups because we bring them with 2 years revenue statement for those international companies. So it's more like advanced a little bit, but however, the learning curve of the Saudi startups is really increased by far. And we see a lot of merging, we see a lot of moving of the talent between them and learn how to really work the startup out. This is for the question number one. The second question about MISC and the collaboration between us and MISC. We have really strong relationship with MISC and especially Dima Lihya, which is she's handling the MISC accelerator, incubator, entrepreneurship and education for talent and startups, and we are working closely with them.
Great. And then why don't we, starting with you, Evan, just answer his last question about kind of what your investment thesis policy is, just really quickly, kind of go down the line, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on the institution we're talking about, Hoff Capital specifically invests seed and early Series A. And it's agnostic as far as global. We have investments across Africa, Flutterwave, across the United States, across Europe, and I believe some in the region. And so as far as that's concerned, it's very early risk capital. Now, as far as like larger sector opportunities in Saudi and the rest of the Middle East, I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth. And anytime you see, massive jumps, in the KSA and the rest of the region as far as opportunities are concerned, there's an ability for investors to come in and make some money. And I would say, energy storage, infrastructure, a lot of the IoT network capacities, even just waste management can also be massive as far as logistical operations are concerned. Yeah.
Awesome. Marlon, quick synopsis?
Yeah, we're even earlier. We're a pre-seed investor, so we're coming alongside typically when the company has just an MVP, an idea, and maybe has raised some funding from friends and family.
Great. Khalil?
Yeah, no, so that's everything required innovation. There's everything required innovation. So from logistics, we're looking at drone innovation, how a drone can play a major role. Are we going to use Hyperloop or something like that? And the transportation side of transporting goods from ports to the land. So you free the ports for recreation and you take things from tankers right to land. So the innovation is everywhere needed. It's not like everywhere, but it is needed. And that's where, since we are in an arena where our university sponsored conference, then the university need to look at, okay, what role we're going to play in this kind of thing. So robotics is going to play a major role. Where are we? Are we there? Are we even close to provide not only human capital, even the technical research in that area? So all these things, I think the university need to look at where the country is going, and they need to, for me, it's like they need actually to spin out another university away from the existing university because it's so bureaucratic and culture depth, and for 50 years or 70 years, it's very hard to change. So it's better to start up a whole new university. Maybe all the universities need to get together and start up a university from scratch, away from all this, and focus on these new scientific, new technologies that the country needs.
Yeah, I think that's a great goal and an interesting opportunity. And Nawaf, to end on you, kind of what's your investment kind of thesis, just really quick. Who's a perfect fit for the Badr program?
Actually, for the investment part, we at Badr program, we think there is no problem with capital in Saudi Arabia, but we think there is lack of leading those rounds. So there is no one to lead the rounds and take the lead of the startups and take care of doing the whole work of this venture. And this is why we have an arm called BAG, and we did this now. We are leading rounds, not investing. We just do it as a leading round for the startups, and it's working very, very well with those startups.
No, awesome. Great. Well, thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you to the audience for listening and asking questions. And well, that's everything.